Welcome to 755 Live, about 5 minutes of what Jesus said. You can find a different command of Jesus every day at our weekday Bible plan, or every weekday, that is. Go to bible.today.church. There's some instructions there, very simple to follow along with. These Jesus says are just soundbite versions of commands and sayings of Jesus, just to help us do what Jesus said. He told us to go make disciples by teaching them to obey all of the commands that I have given you. And so we just try to remind ourselves of that. Today's Jesus said is God's house of prayer is for everyone. This is where Jesus actually kind of turned things upside down in the temple. There are two places in Scripture where we see him entering the temple in Jerusalem and driving out people and knocking over tables. We're going to read not from Matthew 21:13, but from Mark 11:17 today. And I want to start with verse 15 just to kind of give us some context from Mark 11. When they arrived back in Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple and began to drive out the people buying and selling animals for sacrifices. He knocked over the tables of the money changers and the chairs of those selling doves. And he stopped everyone from using the temple as a marketplace. He said to them, "The scriptures declare, my temple will be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have turned it into a den of thieves." This is, it seems kind of out of character to see Jesus, who talked a lot about love and loving your enemies and doing good things for everyone. But he gets to the temple in Jerusalem, and he gets angry. He's upset at what is happening there, and he begins to drive out the things in the temple that weren't like what God originally commanded. Now, it's difficult for us as Western Christians who understand church a certain way. It's difficult to us to understand just all of the reasons why Jesus was upset at what was happening. But people would come to Jerusalem from many, many different areas, and some would travel, hundreds of miles to get there. And so there were certain laws in the Old Testament, so certain rules that God had given about bringing sacrifices to the temple. And these sacrifices were supposed to be the best. They were supposed to be the first. And there were certain rules around that. And there were exceptions to the rules. You could, if the distance was too far to travel, you could sell the animal that you were going to sacrifice and then go buy an animal at the place where you were going to offer the sacrifice. So there were exceptions to the rules, but the principle behind this was offering the best and the first to God. But what was happening in the temple, this had become a business. In fact, some writers in that time period and scholars today think that part of what was happening was that people would be bringing these animals for sacrifice, and the priests in the system could declare an animal unclean and not ready to be sacrificed, and so they would have to purchase a lamb or a dove on site there, and it became this money-making thing. Well, most people carried the Roman currency, but the temple would only accept Jewish currency. And so there were money changers there, and the priests were actually getting a cut of all of the fees to exchange money. What was supposed to be a sacrifice of the best and the first became a business. And it was all about the profit of those who were being fed by what was being brought into the temple. And Jesus got so upset. He said, the scripture says that my house shall be a house of prayer, and you have turned it into a den of thieves. You have turned it into a marketplace. You've turned it into something that isn't about what the sacrifices are. It's supposed to be a house of prayer for everyone, not a place of exclusion, but a place where people are included. Not a place where it's about convenient sacrifice or about marketing or about money, but it's about giving our best and our first to God. Jesus said that God's house would be a house of prayer for everyone. Is that how we treat God's house, God's temple, our worship experience? Are we bringing the best, or are we just looking for the most convenient way? Jesus said, don't do that. But we should be experiencing a house of prayer for everyone. So how can we put that into practice?